what advice would you give to somebody out there now who's thinking, you know what, I want to work, I'm not sure really what it is I want to do, or they might have just finished uni and feeling like that the course that they've done or the degree they've now got isn't necessarily what they want to be doing. What would you recommend they do?
I think utilise ourselves as an agency, get in touch with a recruiter. I like to say to people, let me do the hard work for you, have a good registration with me. Let's go into the nitty gritty, what you want to do. Let's look at your CV together, make you stand out, at the moment, especially with the volume of candidates, as I said, understanding the direction you want to go. Obviously, a lot of the younger generation feel a bit lost. They don't want to commit. I think there's a lot of narrative of trendy roles and stuff. There's a huge piece of gap in the market, skill set shortages, especially within certain sectors like engineering, construction. And I think it's, being realistic. I think a lot of people, I think it's important to have dreams and aspirations, but I think you have to be realistic of what's stable in the market at the moment, what's going to create a career for you, and not, jump to that next level too quickly. We speak to a lot of people that are like, I want this certain salary, or I want this certain job title, and it's, working hard to sort of level yourself up naturally and create a career for yourself, because that leads to that stability and security, because that's really important. I think one of the questions I always ask candidates: are you interviewing anywhere else? What other agencies are you signed up to? Not to necessarily, it naturally gets us, an insight into the market, who's hiring, etc. But equally, I would always advise a candidate, oh, you've got another interview, okay, definitely go to that, because then you know for sure which role's right for you, because there's no point putting them in a role, rushing it, just because you might want to get a fee. I just don't think it's going to work out. It never does. You're at risk of a rebate, you're at risk of relationship damaging for both parties. So I always say, right, sleep on it. I would say speak to family, speak to friends, speak to even colleagues, speak to who you need to, make sure that is the right role for you, and equally get an insight to other roles in the market, so you know for sure this is the right opportunity, because it's too risky at the moment.
Yeah, no.
When you speak to a lot of candidates, why you're leaving, culture, that's a huge factor at the moment. How they're treated, how, as you say, a lot of importance at the moment is flexibility, having that, availability to be there for your children or even grandchildren. We speak to a lot of people that, need to support their grandchildren. So I think it's just having that option, and, a lot of people ask that at interview stage, and it's feeling that acceptance of, this is what I'm walking into. There's no, unconscious bias, that typical, are they a mum? Or it's like inappropriate questions. It's like, no, we don't ask stuff like that. People need to be treated fairly, and they want to feel appreciated, because that's when you'll get the best out of people.
Are qualifications important? Yes, I think they are. And I think businesses do look at them. You see a lot of adverts these days that will say, master's degree, essential, CIP level 7 essential. But if you've got someone that started off as a HR advisor and worked their way up to HR BP or head of HR over a 15-year period, there's nothing that they're not going to have dealt with in that time period that they can learn from a book. I think the learning expands your mind a little bit. So I do, it does give lots of benefits, but I feel like experience is paramount. People getting experience through practical application of, whether that's capability meetings or disciplinaries, or I learned that from doing it. So as a line manager, you learn the ins and outs. You take the advice from the HR experts, you take that in, you then utilize that next time, and I think that's really held me in good stead to be able to implement that throughout my kind of journey through ops into eventually into HR. But yeah, experience is key, and I think varied experience as well. Careers don't have to be linear. If I could give any advice to people looking at their career, particularly if you don't know what you want to do, I spent a lot of time in that space. I used to say, what do I want to be when I grow up? Well, I still don't know. Probably still don't know now. But actually, you don't have to stick to a linear path. Started off as a call centre manager in home, so it was Eon back then. And kind of work through varied roles, gaining different levels of experience, managing people, managing contractors. what I started to do is just take opportunities as they came to me. And I think people overlook that quite a lot in terms of they go and get a job and just expect their experience will carry them through. You've got to have development conversations with your manager. You've got to push that through because you can't expect someone to do that for you. You've got to be at the forefront of your own destiny, if you like. And if you're ambitious, if you want to progress, if you want to develop, it normally starts at the ground. You know, and you may need to take 2 or 3 side steps to gain experience, then move into a different role. What I will say is, don't pass up opportunities.
Yeah.
If you think you can do a role, go for it. You know, if you're reading the job spec of an advert and you think, actually, I've only really got 50% of that, apply for it. A lot of your skills will translate into some other things, and the other things you can learn. When I'm looking at CVs in particular, I'm looking for kind of key statements within that CV. I'm less bothered about the setup of the CV. I'm less bothered about grammar because, you know, you don't know kind of what backgrounds people are from, you know, dyslexia, different kind of neurodivergence. So I'm less bothered about the, you know, I think in the past, people have focused on, you know, if a CV looks bad, that means the person's bad, and it's just not accurate.